What have you garnished from this group? I know they lost a lot of leadership with guys like Jay Higgins leaving. And say what you want about Cade McNamara. He was the starter at quarterback for 2 years. He, of course, is gone. Their quarterback room looks completely different, Don. I mean, it's just totally an overhaul, with the exception being Jackson Stratton. You lose a couple of long-time starters up front. What do you perceive the leadership of this team to look like? Kirk acted like it's strong. At least his words at Big Ten Media Day would indicate such.
You know, it's hard to know unless you're on the inside. I'm not sure. I'll be in practice here in the next few days, and you'll get a little better idea then, of course. But I don't really know what's happened over the summer. And obviously the leadership in the summer is entirely different than it was last fall. The good news, of course, is they've been together throughout the spring semester too. So leaders have emerged, you can bet on it. The first one that comes to mind for me is the guy that just joined us not very long ago, and that would be Mark Gronowski. I have every reason to believe that Mark has already established himself as a leader on the team. And that wouldn't count for much, except there are so many others. You mentioned losing a couple of key offensive linemen. The good news is we got a couple that are back too, that have played a ton of football for us and played well. Those guys will be leaders in the offensive front. You can bet on that.
What makes you think Mark Gronowski will be able to acclimate himself, or has acclimated himself, to that leadership role?
He's a bright guy. I know he certainly leads by example. I know Kirk's been impressed with his commitment to the program. He's put a ton of time into the preparation for this fall. Obviously not 100% healthy for a good portion of that time. But even then, mental reps count for a lot. And I know he's been going through the mental exercise of being our starting quarterback. And as you know, Corey, my first knowledge about Gronowski came back in the fall of 22. A lot of our listeners aren't aware of this, but I was working a game back then. It was South Dakota State at Missouri State. It was in September. It was 90 degrees at kickoff. It was a brutal day to play football. The rest of the story, I remembered he played well, and I even told him this. I said, I remember you played well, but I did go back and look at the numbers just to confirm it. I still remember those numbers, Corey, and I'll share them now. 19 for 29 for 319 yards and 4 touchdowns as a sophomore. That's pretty good.
That was against who?
That was against Missouri State. Not the best of FCS football, but certainly above average.
Yeah.
An above average opponent. Oh, by the way, the coach for Missouri State that day was a name you're familiar with. His name's Bobby Petrino. So it's not like Missouri State doesn't have some idea of football too. Here's what really impressed me about the game, Corey. After 3 quarters, it was 14-all. And with the game on the line, Mark leads them down the field not once but twice. And those 2 touchdowns were 2 touchdown passes, of course. Final was 28-14.
Just so people are aware, I mean, if you're new to this show, you've not been introduced to Don. I'm sure we get new people every offseason, Don, so it'd be a disservice to them to not kind of get them up to speed as to who you are. For those that don't know, you coached in the Missouri Valley, although it was called something else before.
The Gateway Football Conference.
The Gateway Football Conference. But, you know, I had this conversation with Tyler Kluver on Sunday. We recorded a show, and, you know, we were just talking about Mark acclimating himself and the step up in competition. You know, what cancels out what, right? Like, you have better receivers, better tight ends, a better line around you theoretically, but you're also going up against better defensive linemen, better linebackers, you know, bigger road crowds, etc. I mean, you get down the list there. But, you know, I brought up the conference. It's the best conference in the FCS, and there's really no debate about that. And it has been the best conference for a long time, right?
Many years. Even when I went there, Corey, I'll share this with you. Here's what I told Western Illinois when I first arrived. I said, the bad news, guys, I can't help you get to Pasadena. But the good news, if we end up in Chattanooga, you're going to think it's Pasadena. At the time, Chattanooga was the site of the national championship game. Now it's on an even bigger stage. As you know, it's played in a Dallas suburb. It is on national TV. I don't know how many people watch, but it's certainly comparable to a TV audience of a typical Big Ten game. It's at least that many people, if not more. And he played well in not one, but 2 championship games, right? He's been very good under poise. One other story to back up what I'm saying, I got out of the blue, even before I knew Mark was coming. I heard from one of my ex-players, former players at Western Illinois. He said, Coach, I'm really excited to hear you're going to get my all-time favorite recruit, I guess you can call him. J.R. Nicholas is a sports trainer in Chicagoland, and he trained Mark Gronowski as a 9th grader and a 10th grader and an 11th grader. He said, Coach, you're my all-time favorite coach. He's my all-time favorite prospect that I've worked with. I've got great respect for that young man because he is driven to be the best. That's coming from a guy that played in the NFL.
Tell me why, and this is just get the cat out of the bag. Tell me why this experiment, 1 year, by the way, 1 year of eligibility. Tell me why this experiment is going to work better than the Cade McNamara experiment. Tell me why this is going to work when that one, you could argue very easily, did not.
I understand that. And the best explanation I have, Corey, I think I've mentioned this on the air. If not, I'm happy to mention it now. Even before Cade arrived at Iowa's campus, as they were getting ready to play against Iowa in Indianapolis for the Big Ten title a few years ago, I made the comment then. I said, he's a game manager. He's not a difference maker. I'm not trying to beat him up. That's just who he is. The NFL backs me up on that. My guess is he didn't have much interest from the NFL. Otherwise, he wouldn't be coming back for another year of college football. And again, Cade's a wonderful young man, but he's simply a game manager and not a difference maker. I think Mark Gronowski projects better for the NFL without question than Cade. And again, I'm not trying to beat up Cade. I'm just being entirely honest.
It sounds like there's he would have gotten drafted or at least looked at strongly had he left for the league. I mean, he's got some accolades. And again, you talk about the FCS, but it's been the best program in the FCS for the last 5 years. And by the way, yeah, played in a couple of national championships, also lost in the national semifinals last year to, by the way, the other dominant power of the 21st century, North Dakota State, and competed well in that game. So they've been really good. He won what's the award? I should know this. I should have looked it up before we hopped on the air, Don, but what's the national award that's given to the best player in the FCS that we all
You're right. I should know that too because it's a guy that went on to have a big NFL career, but I'm trying to think of who it is now. I can't remember.
Okay.
I'm embarrassed to say that, but I can't recall.
It is the Walter Payton.
Yeah, he was pretty good, wasn't he?
Pretty good, yeah.
By the way, I went to a small school.
Rings a bell. Yeah, so, the accolades are there. The transition, we haven't seen it. The other concern that I think fans had when it initially broke that he was coming, and then all of a sudden we get, he's going to be out for the spring with a shoulder injury. It's like, here we go again with the injury bug. But I hope people really listen to what you just said as it relates to why it's going to be different. I mean, he's dealt with some injuries. He did deal with a serious knee injury as an underclassman. That's a fact, right? There's no escaping that. But he has proven to be able to stay healthy since then. The shoulder thing was, I don't want to say it was insignificant because it wasn't, but you could almost call it maintenance related for somebody who's been throwing the football for as many years as he has. Is that fair, Don? Yeah,
you just have to go back to that game against North Dakota State. I watched that game in its entirety, and they lost the game. But just so you know, if you're playing in Fargo, it's an indoor facility with a wonderful fan base. One of my all-time favorite wins as a head coach was in Fargo because at the time we beat them up there, I think you could count the number of games they've lost in that building almost on one hand. They're almost unbeatable in there. South Dakota State lost to them last winter. That's all true, but it was a tight game that could have gone either way, and Mark played just fine, even though, again, there was a lot of pressure on a visitor's field.